have such a fine home that you cannot show yourself there. Now the ironmaster tries to console him. He says, don't worry. Don't think just because you're not well dressed that you cannot enter my house. My house is also a very simple thing. It's nothing big. He said, Elizabeth is dead, as you may already have heard. Now who was Elizabeth? The ironmaster's wife. He said she died. My boys are abroad. His sons were living abroad. And there is no one at home except my oldest daughter and myself. He tells, look, there's nobody at home. It's just me and my eldest daughter. That's it. There is no one else. So you don't need to feel embarrassed or feel bad about the fact that you are not well dressed. We were just saying that it was too bad we didn't have any company for Christmas. He's saying, the ironmaster was telling him, in fact, my daughter and I were just discussing that, we are celebrating Christmas alone. There's nobody with us. Generally for Christmas, you have relatives, you have friends coming in. And if you remember, again, this was Christmas Eve, right? So the next day was Christmas. So the ironmaster is so happy that they have at least somebody with them to celebrate Christmas. Now come along with me and help us make the Christmas food disappear a little faster. He says, come on, don't bother, cheer up. You come in with me and we'll make the Christmas food disappear a little faster. All the festive that was, all the items that were cooked, the special food for Christmas, they do have a special menu for that day. It's a big royal feast. So he says, don't worry, you come in and we'll take all the pleasure of that yummy food and we'll finish it a little faster. We'll be more, the faster it'll get over. But the stranger said no and no and again no. And the ironmaster saw that he must give in. He was not ready. The stranger said, no ways. He literally kept denying, kept refusing that I am not ready to come in. And the ironmaster somehow felt that I cannot, work on this more than this. He says, they were yet there near the forge. He says now, he literally gave up, the ironmaster. He says, I don't know how to convince him, how to bring him home, how do I force him? So he thought, I need to give in, that means I need to give up. It looks as though Captain Morstale preferred to stay with you tonight, Skenstorm, he said to the master blacksmith and turned on his heel. So when the ironmaster couldn't persuade him any longer, he couldn't persuade the peddler to come home, so he tells the blacksmith, he tells him that I guess Captain Morstale, he's referring to whom? The peddler. He's saying, looks like he wants to stay with you in the forge itself. He does not want to join me home. He wants to stay with you. But when he said it, he turned on his heel. He just turned about, but he laughed to himself as he went away. And the blacksmith who knew him understood very well that he had not said his last word. The blacksmith was very smart. He knew his master very well. He said, this man is hiding something. He did not tell me exactly what it is, but definitely he is hiding something. It was not more than half an hour before they heard the sound of carriage wheels outside the forge, and a new guest came in. But this time, it was not the ironmaster. Within half an hour, after the ironmaster had left, within half an hour, they heard the sound of the carriage wheels just outside the forge. And there was a guest that came in, but it was not the ironmaster. Who was it? He had sent his daughter. You remember, the ironmaster had told the peddler that I live with my oldest daughter. So she had come, apparently hoping that she would have better powers of persuasion than he himself. So what did the ironmaster do? He went home and he told his daughter about this, and she had more convincing power. She knew that she could persuade him. So her father sent her. He told her that please go and convince him and ask him to come home. Bring him home. She entered followed by a valet as in an attendant, a personal attendant, carrying on his arm a big fur coat. The attendant of this girl was carrying a fur coat. She was not at all pretty, but seemed modest and quite shy. She was not very pretty, but yeah, she was definitely modest. She was humble. She was down to earth. She was not proud because they were rich or something. It was definitely not the case. And she was also quite shy. In the forge, everything was just as it had been earlier in the evening. As she entered, everything was absolutely the same way as it had been working. The master blacksmith and his apprentice as in maybe a person with him who was learning, who was under training, they still sat on their bench, and iron and charcoal still glowed in the furnace. Now, they were still sitting there and the iron and charcoal was still glowing in the furnace. You remember they had put it in that and they were coming and going and stirring it with that long iron bar. The stranger had stretched himself out on the floor and lay with a piece of pig iron under his head and his hat pulled down over his eyes. He just stretched himself. He sat down, he slept on the floor, and he had that block. It was a block, the pig iron, like I told you, was a block of that iron thing, and he put that, he used it like a pillow, and he put his hat over his eyes. Now this is how he was sleeping. As soon as the young girl caught sight of him, she went up and lifted his hat. The moment she saw him, she quickly moved away the hat from his face. The man was evidently used to sleeping with one eye open. In the sense, he was sleeping, but yet he was on an alert mode. He was not fast asleep. He jumped up abruptly and seemed to be quite frightened. You remember that guilt was there in his mind. He has stolen money. He just jumped up suddenly thinking, who's come now? You know, when she lifted his hat, and he seemed to be quite frightened. He was really scared because of that guilt which was there in him. My name is Edla Wilmanson, said the young girl. She introduced herself. My father came home and said that you wanted to sleep here in the forge tonight. And then I asked permission to come and bring you home to us. She says, my dad mentioned about you to me, and so I felt, let me try and convince you. I am so sorry, Captain, that you are having such a hard time. Remember, for him, he was Nils Olof, for the Iron Master. So she calls him a captain. That you are having such a hard time. She felt, she pitied him. She showed sympathy towards him. She looked at him compassionately out of sympathy with her heavy eyes, and then she noticed that the man was afraid. Now she could read his eyes. She could read the expressions on his face. What did she think? Either he has stolen something or else he has escaped from jail, she thought, and added quickly. What she felt was the moment she saw the expression on his face, two things came to her mind. The way he is afraid, now there are two possibilities. Either he has stolen something, that's the reason that guilt is showing on his face, or it has been a jailbreak, he has escaped from the jail. Either of the two, something has definitely happened. So what did she tell him? You may be sure, Captain, that you will be allowed to leave us just as freely as you came. She says, don't worry, we are not going to ask you to stay for longer. You can leave whenever you want. The moment you feel you are uncomfortable, you can just walk out. We will not stop you. Only please stay with us over Christmas Eve. She says, at least today, being the Christmas Eve, at least this night you spend with us, and tomorrow, the moment you feel, as soon as the sun rises, if you feel you're not comfortable, you can just go away and we will not stop you. Students, here we come to the end of part 2. You, as always, you have the meanings, you have the slides with the meanings, refer to them, and we shall continue the story in part 3. And here we begin the third part of the rat trap. You remember when we left part 2, at the end of part 2, it was when Elder Wilmanson had come to offer the peddler to come home. Her father had sent her and she was there inviting him to come home for the Christmas Eve. Now, what happens further? Let's see in part 3 of the rat trap. She said this in such a friendly manner that the rat trap peddler must have felt confidence in her. If you remember, her dad, the iron master, had invited him home, but he totally refused. Now, when his daughter, the iron master's daughter, had come to invite him home, she said it in such a friendly and in such a sweet tone that he got all the confidence and he readily accepted her offer. "It would never have occurred to me that you would bother with me yourself, miss," he said. He says, "I wouldn't even think of it. Why would you want to do this to me? Why would you want to invite me? You have come specially to invite me home. I don't even understand why would you want to do this." "I will come at once," he readily agreed. He accepted the fur coat which the valet handed him with a deep bow, threw it over his rags, and followed the young lady out to the carriage without granting the astonished blacksmiths so much as a glance. Now, as soon as he accepted the offer, he accepted the fur coat. If you remember, the valet, the attendant of the young lady was carrying a fur coat when she entered, when Elder had entered. And he gave that to him with a bow. He, did that as the attendant, and he put it over his rags. He put the coat over his torn clothes, and he followed the young lady out to the carriage without granting the astonished blacksmiths. You remember there was the blacksmith over there along with the apprentice? Yes. So he didn't even look at them. They were shocked that what is this happening? How is it possible? The iron master's daughter herself has come to take this peddler home for what? That same peddler whom the ironsmith had not even bothered, the blacksmith had not even bothered to look at. I mean, that was really a shock to them. But while he was riding up to the manor house, he had evil forebodings. Now, while they were in the carriage, while he was heading to the manor house, to the young lady's house, he had evil forebodings. He somewhere was having those evil thoughts that, now this is going to happen to you. Like he could tell, like it was a foretelling, it was the future that he was predicting. He was actually predicting that something evil is going to happen. He sort of had that feel, if you remember. And why did he have that feel? Why? Because he was guilty. Do you remember the 3 notes, the 30 kroner that he had stolen? So that was going on in his mind. Why the devil did I take that fellow's money? He thought. He said, why did I start the trouble for myself? Why did I put the axe on my foot? I took that, and after that it has been a typical worldly rat trap that became as a bait, right? That 30 kroner actually tempted him. He went for it, and now he is gradually falling into a trap. Now I am sitting in the trap and will never get out of it. The next day was Christmas Eve. And when the iron master came into the dining room for breakfast, he probably thought with satisfaction of his old regimental comrade whom he had run across so unexpectedly. Now, when the iron master came, he came into the dining for his breakfast, he was sort of very happy. Why he was happy? Because very unexpectedly he had come across his regimental comrade, his regimental associate, his associate who was with him in the military when they were together. And that's why he had a feeling of satisfaction, and it was so unexpectedly that he actually bumped into him, that he met him. First of all, we must see to it that he gets a little flesh on his bones, he said to his daughter, who was busy at the table. Now, here the iron master is telling his daughter that please make sure that he eats enough, that he puts on a little weight, that he gets some, layers of fat, some skin on his bones. What does this mean was his bones were visible. He was very, very thin. And so he tells her that make sure he eats that much enough that he becomes a little fat. He gets some flesh over his bones. And then we must see that he gets something else to do than to run around the country selling rat traps. Now, once we'll take care of him right now, first let him eat food, let him, stabilize here. And then we'll do something for him so that he doesn't have to do this petty job of going around selling these rat traps. We'll make sure we give him, do something better for him. It is queer that things have gone downhill with him as badly as that, said the daughter. She said, this is very strange. I mean, how can such terrible things happen to this man? You remember when we had said downhill means worse things, the worst things that could happen to him? She was really shocked. She said, how is it possible? Last night, I did not think there was anything about him to show that he had once been an educated man. Now, this young lady, Elda, she was a little smart. She was very observant. You remember, she was very timid. She was shy. But she observed one thing. She said, last night when I saw this man, somehow, somewhere I felt that from no angle did I find him an educated man. I mean, come on, when you are educated, there is a personality. There's a certain personality that you develop. So she found that missing in him. She said, no, I don't find him that educated. She had that thought, coming to her head. So her dad tells her, you must have patience, my little girl, said the father. As soon as he gets clean and dressed up, you will see something different. He says, relax. Just relax, take some time, let him freshen up, let him really, come out of those rags, and you will see how different the picture is. You will get to see the makeover in him. Last night, he was naturally embarrassed. He said last night, obviously that look on his face was a little embarrassing look because he was in torn clothes. His condition was very different. He had that poor looking condition. So obviously he was a little embarrassed. The tramp manners will fall away from him with the tramp clothes. Now the tramp clothes, the vagabond, that person who keeps roaming from place to place. So those looks, those manners, because he was dressed in those untidy, torn and rags. So once he comes out of those torn clothes, he will have a better look. He will have a better looking personality. Just as he said this, the door opened and the stranger entered. Stranger, tramp, vagabond, peddler, rat trap seller. You remember all the names? The same person we are talking about. Yes, now he was truly clean and well dressed. The valet had bathed him, cut his hair and shaved him. Now, he had a perfect makeover. What he was when he came to their house, and now after getting a full, freshening session, after the valet took care of him in every way, he was clean shaven, he had a good haircut, he was well dressed. So obviously he looked way different now. Moreover, he was dressed in a good-looking suit of clothes which belonged to the iron master. Now he had also worn a nice suit, a smart-looking suit which belonged actually to the iron master, but he lent it because he was his friend, so he lended it to him. He wore a white shirt and a starched collar and whole shoes. Now he wore a white shirt, now the collar of which was crisp, it was absolutely stiff. Yeah, the collar which was there was not at all movable, it was nice and stiff. And he had worn proper shoes, absolutely well-fitted shoes. He was so well dressed. But although his guest was now so well groomed, the iron master did not seem pleased. Now, The Iron Master wanted him to look nice, so he got this makeover thing done for him. But now that he was well dressed, well groomed as in he was well dressed, the Iron Master did not seem pleased. Why? The Iron Master somehow lost his happiness. Now his friend was well dressed, everything was perfect, he was about to eat good food, but why was he upset? Somewhere he was displeased. He looked at him with puckered brow, and it was easy to understand that when he had seen the strange fellow in the uncertain reflection from the furnace, he might have made a mistake. But that now, when he stood there in broad daylight, it was impossible to mistake him for an old acquaintance. Now, why was he displeased? The moment he saw him, he saw the actual person. He saw the actual, everything was revealed. He was absolutely what he was, who he was. So when the Iron Master sees him, he looks at him with puckered brow. Puckered brow, you know when you have wrinkles on your brow, that's a puckered brow. He looked at him very strangely. He just realized that he was not his friend. Why? Because when he saw him the very first moment, you know, the furnace, he saw him right, if you remember, he was right near the furnace when the Iron Master had come for inspection. So when he saw him there, at that time there was all steam coming out of his rags. It was a different thing, the reflection of the furnace, that fire inside the furnace was having a different reflection on him, so he looked different. And this guy had mistaken him for someone else. Now he realized, when everything was in clear shape, did he realize that, look, that's not my friend. That's just not him. That time he had seen him in front of the furnace, and now he stood there in broad daylight. It was just morning. It was broad daylight and he had light on his face, and that is when he realized it was impossible to mistake him for an old acquaintance. He is not the person. I have made a mistake. He is not the person I had thought of. What does this mean? He thundered. He was shocked. He said, what do you mean? What is this? The stranger made no attempt to dissimulate. The stranger stood calm and composed. He did not react. He did not pretend. Dissimulate is he did not pretend. He did not put up a fake thing. Oh, what are you talking about? I am your friend. He did not do that. Because if you remember, when he was in the carriage, somewhere his mind was telling him that, you know what, there is something evil going to happen to you. And he was ready to accept it. So he stood there calm and composed when the Iron Master thundered, what is this? Who are you? He stood still. He did not make an attempt to tell him that, you know what, I am the same person you are thinking of, and so, nothing. He did not utter a word. He saw at once that the splendor had come to an end. He immediately realized that all the fancy things, all that lovely things that were happening to him have now come to an end. It is not my fault, sir, he said. I never pretended to be anything but a poor trader, and I pleaded and begged to be allowed to stay in the forge. He says, look, I was there. I was that same poor Rattrap seller. It was you who forced me, and I kept telling you that I don't want to go with you. I kept denying. I kept refusing. It was you who forced me to come here. It was your daughter who forced me to come here. I had no such intention of coming here. I wanted to stay there in the forge. I just wanted to spend the night and make myself warm enough. That's it. But no harm has been done. He continues to tell him, he says, look, fine, I came, all these things happened to me, but still no harm has happened. Nothing wrong has happened. I haven't done anything wrong here. So don't worry about the fact. At worst, I can put on my rags again and go away. He says, at the most what? I will remove your clothes, I will put back my old torn clothes, and I will simply walk away. That's it. Nothing beyond that. It's as simple as that. Well, said the ironmaster, hesitating a little. He was sort of unwilling. He says, should I just let him go away? I mean, should I do that? It was not quite honest either. He says, so do you think, if you think you have not cheated me, but you weren't even honest, you didn't even tell me that you are not my friend. You must admit that, and I should not be surprised if the sheriff would like to have something to say in the matter. He says, you could have at least told me that. And then, now, if I tell the sheriff, the police out there, the Sweden, the countryside police, they call them the sheriff. So he said, I'm sure he wouldn't, want to tell me anything. He wouldn't be surprised if I hand you over to him. He has something to say in the matter, in the sense, he would take care of you if I hand you over to them. The tramp took a step forward and struck the table with his fist. He came forward and he was just near the table, and he put his fist and he just hit the table. Why did he do that? What did he say next? Now, I am going to tell you, Mr. Ironmaster, how things are. He further goes to explain things to him. This whole world is nothing but a big rat trap. All the good things that are offered to you are nothing but cheese rinds and bits of pork set out to drag a poor fellow into trouble. Now you remember his philosophy. You remember what he had once mentioned, that this whole world is a big rat trap and the joys and riches are all the bait. Everyone gets tempted to get that and then they fall into trouble. Exactly the same had happened to him, and this is what he's trying to explain to the ironmaster. He says, all the good things that are offered to you are nothing but cheese rinds and bits of pork. They are set out, they are put in different places, and they just want to get this poor little fellow into trouble. Cheese rinds, we all know, slices of cheese, and bits of pork, that's meat. And if the sheriff comes now and locks me up for this, then you, Mr. Ironmaster, must remember that a day may come when you yourself may want to get a big piece of pork, and then you will get caught in the trap. He says, fine, hand me over to the police, not an issue. But remember, one day you will be in my shoes. You will face the same thing. You will want a big piece of pork. You will get tempted for something big, and you also will fall into trouble the same way I did. The ironmaster began to laugh. The ironmaster actually began to laugh because the way he explained it to him, he really found it funny. But he said, that was not so badly said. He was impressed. My good fellow, perhaps we should let the sheriff alone on Christmas Eve. He says, I think let the police enjoy. Let him enjoy. It's Christmas Eve. I will not disturb him. Indirectly, he is telling him that I am not handing you over to him. But now, get out of here as fast as you can. He says, fine, what's done is done. But right now, please get out as quickly as you can. But just as the man was opening the door, as soon as, the peddler tried to open the door, the daughter said, I think he ought to stay with us today. The moment he was trying to go, the daughter said, no, I don't think he should go. He should stay with us today. I don't want him to go. And with that, she went and closed the door. She says, no, I don't want him to go. Let him be here today. She quickly shut the door which the peddler had opened. What in the world are you doing? Said the father. He was shocked. He says, what are you doing? We have just got to know already. He is not the person we had thought of. What are you doing? Let him go. The daughter stood there quite embarrassed, and hardly knew what to answer. She had reacted. But when her father asked her the question that what are you doing? What is this happening? She was so embarrassed that she didn't know what to answer him. That morning she had felt so happy when she thought how home-like and Christmassy she was going to make things for the poor, hungry wretch. Now that morning she was very happy. She was excited that they had somebody with them on Christmas Eve. She was preparing a nice feast for him. The royal lunch of Christmas they were preparing. And it was looking so nice and homely when you had someone with you. So she had thought of preparing this for this poor, hungry wretch, this unfortunate person, this person who was looking miserable and was unfortunate and unhappy. So she was preparing something for him. So she was very excited. She could not get away from the idea all at once. Throughout the morning she was happy making things and, happy to serve this man who was so hungry. So she was very excited, and that thought of not doing it for him at once was not ready to go. And that was why she had interceded for the vagabond. Now that thought that I'm going to make something for this man and make him happy and give him some happiness, bring some joy, bring a smile on his face, all these thoughts made her intercede. She literally intervened. She actually, interrupted those people. She barged into their topic. Now it was a talk going on between the peddler and the iron master, and she just interfered there. She interceded, she interfered and she opted, she actually vouched for him, for the vagabond. I am thinking of this stranger here, said the young girl. He walks and walks the whole year long, and there is probably not a single place in the whole country where he is welcome and can feel at home. Now you remember she was a very humble girl. She was very modest. She was very down to earth. So she had a lot of pity for this man. She told her dad, you have any idea how he lives his life? He walks and walks and walks. He keeps traveling from one place to another and keeps selling those rat traps all year long, and there is not a place in the whole country where he would be welcome. Nobody is there to really welcome him, to show any kind of love and affection and make him feel at home. There is no such place in the whole world for this man. Wherever he turns, he is chased away. Wherever he goes, people just drive him away. I mean, obviously he's not well dressed and he's carrying those rat traps. Who would welcome such a person? Always he is afraid of being arrested and cross-examined. Always that thought, that fear is there in his mind that he will be arrested by the police, he will be questioned by them. Always he is living in that fear. I should like to have him enjoy a day of peace with us here, just one in the whole year. She tells her dad, look, just let us give him that one day of peace. Let him royally enjoy the feast. Let him enjoy this Christmas Eve at least for one day of the year. The iron master mumbled something in his beard. He could not bring himself to oppose her. Now she was talking so much for him. So the iron master, he said something, he mumbled, he said something in his mouth, in his beard. Obviously nobody could hear it. But at the same time, he was not ready to tell her that don't do it, it's okay, let me go. He was not ready to oppose her. He was okay with what Elder was saying. He was fine with it. It was all a mistake, of course, she continued. She says, I agree. I totally agree with you, Dad, that definitely we have made a mistake. We have brought in the wrong person. But anyway, I don't think we ought to chase away a human being whom we have asked to come here and to whom we have promised Christmas cheer. She says, Dad, how is it fair? It was we forced him home. We asked him to spend the Christmas Eve with us, and now we ask him to just leave without celebrating. Let's just enjoy the Christmas with him. Let's gift him a smile on this beautiful day. Let's give him some peace and happiness. You do preach worse than a parson, said the ironmaster. The ironmaster, her dad, he says, you know, the way you are talking for him, the parson here is a male religious priest. He's a male priest basically. She says, your preaching, the way you're talking for him is more effective than what the priest says. That strongly you are talking for him, you're in favor of him. I only hope you won't have to regret this. He says, okay, fine, if that's what you want, but I only wish that nothing that you are doing right now gives you any trouble. I hope you won't have to regret. I hope you won't have to repent this. The young girl took the stranger by the hand and led him up to the table. She quickly took him by the hand and she took him towards the table. Now, sit down and eat, she said, for she could see that her father had given in. She told him, okay, now relax. Now you sit, eat this food. And she knew now that the father had surrendered. He had given up. Okay, fine, do what you want. That's what he meant. The man with the rat traps said not a word. He only sat down and helped himself to the food. He was quiet. He did not even utter a word. He just sat there and he started eating the food that was on the table. Time after time, he looked at the young girl who had interceded for him. As he was eating, again and again, he was looking at the girl who had actually spoken for him, who had stood by him. He just kept wondering, why had she done it? What could the crazy idea be? He was blank. He couldn't understand that why is she doing this to me? Who am I of hers? There is no connection. I am not even the person they thought I was. So why is she doing that? He had the thing going on in the mind and simultaneously he was eating. After that, Christmas Eve at Ramsco passed just as it always had. All this happened and then as always every year the way they celebrate their Christmas Eve, it all happened the same. The stranger did not cause any trouble because he did nothing but sleep. Now you remember, he was totally exhausted. He had never had a good sleep and a proper meal. He got both. He was so much at peace. He was so much at comfort. He was in so much of warmth, love and affection that all that he did was he did not cause any trouble to anybody. He ate his food quietly and he just fell asleep. He was in deep sleep. The whole forenoon, he lay on the sofa in one of the guest rooms and slept at one stretch. Forenoon, noon is afternoon, so the period before the afternoon. So anywhere between the morning and afternoon. He lay on the sofa. He slept so peacefully on the sofa in one of the guest rooms and he slept at one stretch. He was continuously sleeping. He did not wake up. At noon, they woke him up so that he could have his share of the good Christmas fare. But after that, he slept again. Now, he was so fast asleep that they literally had to wake him up so that he could enjoy the Christmas feast. The Christmas fare means all that rich food that had been prepared for the festival, for the day. He ate that and again he fell asleep. It seemed as though for many years he had not been able to sleep as quiet and safely as here at Ramsco. He said this has been for so many years. He had not been able to sleep as peacefully. He had not had a filled stomach for so long. And here he was safe, he was quiet at Ramsco. In the evening, when the Christmas tree was lighted, they woke him up again. Now, do you imagine? He was sleeping all the time. And he stood for a while in the drawing room, blinking as though the candlelight hurt him. But after that, he disappeared again. Now he came there again. He was there. He saw the beautiful Christmas tree that was lit up over there. And he stood there for a while in the drawing room. His eyes were like, that because he was in deep sleep throughout the day, he had been sleeping. So that candlelight hurt his eyes. But again, he ate and again he disappeared. He did not talk, nothing. Again, he went back to sleep. 2 hours later, he was aroused once more. Once again, he was woken up and brought. He then had to go down into the dining room and eat the Christmas fish and porridge. Now, whatever according to their customs, on Christmas, whatever special dishes they would prepare. So he had to go and eat the Christmas fish. They prepare some special kind of fish probably in a special manner. And porridge. Porridge is something like, we have these cereals or the khichdi types that we have. They call it porridge. As soon as they got up from the table, he went around to each one present and said, "Thank you and good night." But when he came to the young girl, she gave him to understand that it was her father's intention that the suit which he wore was to be a Christmas present. Now, as soon as they got up from the table, he got up, he ate. Now, what did he do? He got up and he wished everybody a thank you and a good night. He expressed his gratitude and he wished everyone a good night. But when he came to that girl, when he came to tell her, she had stood by him, she put it to him in such a manner that, "Don't worry, this suit that you are wearing, my dad's, it's my father's wish that you keep it to yourself as a Christmas gift." He did not have to return it. And if he wanted to spend next Christmas Eve in a place where he could rest in peace and be sure that no evil would befall him, he would be welcomed back again. He felt that she told him, she says, "Don't worry. If at any point of time, the next year, if you feel like this, or any time of the year, you feel you want to get some nice peace, you are always welcome here. You can just step into our house. You don't have to think twice. Just come back and have a good time with us." She says, "Don't worry, nothing evil will happen to you. You just come. Don't worry at all." The man with the rat traps did not answer anything to this. He was blank. What could he say to this? He only stared at the young girl in boundless amazement. He was absolutely blank. There was no limit to his shock. It was a boundless amazement. He was absolutely stunned. He had no words to say. All that he did was he looked at that girl. The next morning, the ironmaster and his daughter got up in good season to go to the early Christmas service. Now, the next morning, as per their rituals, as per their custom, the father and the daughter, the ironmaster and his daughter Elda, they got up in good season. It was a very beautiful climate out there, and they went for the early Christmas service. Christmas service, early in the morning, they go to the church and they have some prayer sessions out there. That's a Christmas service. Their guest was still asleep and they did not disturb him. He said that, you remember, he was shocked at what Elda had said, and he walked out quietly and he had gone to sleep. Now, when these people went to the church, the peddler was still asleep, and because then these guys did not disturb him, they quietly went away. When at about 10 o'clock, they drove back home from the church, the young girl sat and hung her head even more dejectedly than usual. Now, it was around 10 o'clock when they were coming back from the church. The young girl, she sat down and she put her head down dejectedly, as in very sadly. She had somehow she was unhappy. She was very sad, more than usual. But why was that? At church, she had learned that one of the old crofters of the ironworks had been robbed by a man who went around selling rat traps. Why was she unhappy? Now, she had trusted this man. She had given him everything. She gave him all the food. She even, went against her dad's wish, and she just let him have all the pleasures. She gave him rich food to eat. She gave him the best of clothes to wear. She wanted to give him happiness. It was very selfless approach she had given. There was no condition to it. It was totally unconditional love that she had expressed to the stranger. But what had he done? And that brought her total unhappiness. He had robbed one of the old crofters of the ironworks. She was totally unhappy about the fact. Yes, that was a fine fellow you let into the house, said her father. Now her father was sarcastic. He taunted her. He says, now do you see whom you brought home? I only wonder how many silver spoons are left in the cupboard by this time. Now they had got this news in the church. When they were in the church, they got to know about this robbery. So he keeps wondering. He says, now the silver spoons that we have in the cupboard, I wonder, are they there or are they gone? Has he robbed even those? The wagon had hardly stopped at the front steps when the ironmaster asked the valet whether the stranger was still there. As soon as they reached home, as soon as the wagon stopped in front, he immediately asked the attendant, is that man still there or has he gone? He added that he had heard at church that the man was a thief. He told the valet that in the church I have come across the fact that this man is a thief. The valet answered that the fellow had gone and that he had not taken anything with him at all. The valet told his master, the ironmaster, that he has definitely gone, but yes, he has not taken anything at all with him. On the contrary, in fact, he had left behind a little package which Miss Wilmanson was to be kind enough to accept as a present, as a Christmas present. Now, he did not take anything. In fact, he has left a small gift, a small Christmas gift for Miss Elder. The young girl opened the package, which was so badly done up that the contents came into view at once. Now, he knew nothing. He didn't know he could pack, he would wrap it up in a nice paper or something of the sort. He just crumpled and he put something together. He just wanted to give it to her. So the way it was done, the moment she opened it, she could immediately see what was in it. She gave a little cry of joy. She was happy. Why? She found a small rat trap and in it lay 3 wrinkled 10-kroner notes. Now, what did he give her as a gift? He left her a small rat trap, and along with that, if you remember, he had robbed this money on the highway from the grey cottage, from the leather pouch near the window. You remember that whole scene? Yes, those same 3 wrinkled 10-kroner notes were also in her gift. But that was not all. In the rat trap lay also a letter written in large jagged characters. He had written it in such a manner, he was not that, this thing. So he wrote a letter as well in that. Honored and noble Miss. He had total respect. He admired this little girl. And so he, with full due respect, he writes this to her. Since you have been so nice to me all day long, as if I was a captain, I want to be nice to you. In return, as if I was a real captain, for I do not want you to be embarrassed at this Christmas season by a thief. He tells her, he writes to her that for all the good that you did to me, I want to return the same to you. Yes, of course, according to you, you had imagined that I was the captain, but if I was a real captain, if that's That's what you could say, because I definitely don't want you to be embarrassed that a thief was there in my house on Christmas Eve. But you can give back the money to the old man on the roadside who has the money pouch hanging on the window frame as a bait for poor wanderers. He tells her that, you know what, this money which I had stolen from there, I want you to return it to that man over there. Make sure you give it back to him, because this is like a bait. It's like a temptation for the poor wanderers. For poor wanderers like me, I am a person who goes from place to place. And for me, if I see that money, I had seen that money and I had got tempted. I had fallen into the trap. So please return it to him. It is more of a temptation for poor wanderers. The rat trap is a Christmas present from a rat who would have been caught in this world's rat trap if he had not been raised to captain, because in that way he got power to clear himself. He says this trap which I have given you is from a rat. He calls himself the rat here. I would have been trapped into that rat trap, the whole world temptation that he had fallen into, that, you know, that vicious circle which he had fallen into. He says, thank God you guys took me as the captain. It gave me that power that I was able to become guilt free now. All the wrong that I had done, the sin I had committed, I got a chance to clear myself. I no longer am guilty. Whatever I robbed, I am giving it back to you to hand it over to that man. And thank God, thanks to you, that I did not fall into that big world trap. Written with friendship and high regards, Captain Von Stale. He wrote that letter with total affection, total admiration, total respect for that girl, because it was she who saved him from getting into more deeper trouble. And see how he addresses it? He addresses it as Captain Von Stale. So yes, this is where our story comes to an end. And as always, you see you have the meanings right here. Please refer to them while you are reading the chapter again, to get the answers of the extracts which you will have to answer, even the answers that you will have to do, and what does this convey to you? What message, what is your takeaway of the chapter? Material things only bring you temporary happiness. It was so easily proved in the story. That wasn't that very temporary. All the luxuries that he got, it was so temporary. Did it last for him permanently? Hardly a day or a two. He got all the luxuries of life, but that happiness did not last. That happiness was there just for a day or two. And after that, what? Again pain, again misery. So all the materialistic things of life, they give you all temporary happiness. This happiness is never permanent. Always look for things. I don't mean materialistic things, but always look for that unconditional love. Give that unconditional love that gives you permanent happiness. So keep watching and keep learning.